Hey everybody, welcome back to Roosters on Olentangy River Road in beautiful Columbus, Ohio. The weather is great, and we don't have to talk about COVID-19 today because we have a Big Ten schedule.
Nice.
I'm back after 1 week. I guess all I had to do was leave for Texas and not host this show for us to get Big Ten football back. Michael Bennett, Evan Spencer, Zach Bourne, three guys who were on the same team. We're just getting the age groups back together.
Oh, yeah.
Welcome back. Hey, Big Ten football is back.
I know.
Finally.
It's back. Maybe your trip was some weird kind of luck. I mean, I don't know. What
I was trying to take a vacation, and then things went sideways, so I didn't really work that much, or didn't get to relax that much.
Yeah, I was about to say, you probably had a lot of work going on, but all the right kind.
I'm convinced Kevin Warren was watching Lettermen Row. He's like, man, they make too many good points. We got to get this schedule back. We got to get this season going.
Zach, had you given up hope that we were going to get a season in?
No, I had hope. I hadn't been on the show. You know, I was like, I'm going to not be on the show so much until we get Big Ten football back. Now we're back. Now I'm back. You know, I'm back on the show. We're good to go.
So he needs that juice going. You know what I mean? He's got to ride off of it.
The juice guy's gone, but there's still mac and cheese bites out here. All right, so October 24th, it's on. Ohio State, they're going to play 8 games plus 1 in the Big Ten this year.
Yep.
That's going to be a pretty fun day on December 19th, actually. Set your calendars for Rutgers against Illinois in the morning.
At 11 a.m. 10 a.m.
I was played at 6 a.m. I don't know. And Ohio State, Wisconsin, that's my prediction at night. Let's just start right there. We know that there's a Big Ten season. We're only going to talk about football today.
Sure.
I think we're all in agreement that Ohio State's going to win the East. Who's going to come out of the West?
I'm going to leave that to someone else. You go ahead.
I honestly, I think it's Wisconsin, right? I honestly believe that Nebraska.
I'm getting you back in football.
Yeah, I think Nebraska's on their way back. I really do, but they're still a couple years away, you know. And plus, they're starting with Ohio State, you know, week 1 of the Big Ten season. Everything is, you know, Wisconsin. I know Minnesota had that run last year, but I still don't think they're that program that is going to be consistent year over year. I think they've had that one really good year, and we saw what they did. But, man, it's Wisconsin's lose. Kind of like the East is Ohio State's lose. Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to piggyback off you. I'll take the cheap route there. But, you know, just looking at Wisconsin and the way that they play ball, you know, I know that they had a freshman quarterback come in last year and played well. And, you know, he has a lot of confidence there, too. So, to just be able to take advantage of games from a time possession standpoint and, you know, have a quarterback that's developing in confidence, you know, I do like them best coming out of there as well. But, you know, there's still so many question marks, right? You know, there's whether it was practice and then, you know, not getting 7-on-7 or getting everything and not getting this, right? There's going to be natural holes that, you know, limit our ability to predict things logically. So we'll see what those holes look like here in a few weeks.
I'm going to piggyback off of what they said. I mean, I don't know if I'm supposed to know more. When I think of the West, the only one I really think of is Wisconsin.
Right.
I mean, I think the West has more solid teams, like more consistently solid teams than the East, but they don't have any really heavy hitters except when Wisconsin decides to show up. I think, like what Zach said, Minnesota, you never know what they're going to do. Iowa, you never know what they're going to do, but to really see them, I think Wisconsin only has the most firepower of all of them.
Here's the one thing, too, that I'm going to add from a football analysis standpoint is that this year's been a crazy year, right? Spring ball, really no one had spring ball. Summer, really no one had any summer training besides some lifting and running, right? And fall camp's still going to be weird. Yes, they're going to have 3 weeks to get ready. And, you know, we've said this before on the show, and I think all of us can agree that you really need 3 weeks. And 3 weeks as a player, I'm like, I'm ready to go, right? That's all I need. But in saying that, without spring ball, without some summer, without some of those things done, it's going to come back to who can run the football. It doesn't take skill to run the football, right? It takes some grit. It takes heart. You line up and you go toe-to-toe, who's the tougher man, right? When you want to spread it out and go 5 wide and, you know, have a little jazz and everything else, it takes a little bit more quarterback, wide receiver being on the same page, right? Some timing stuff, which takes a little bit more. You see it in the NFL. Look at what Tom Brady, he's kind of struggled his first 2 weeks, right? You see it with some of the new offensive coordinators and coaches, just the way football's been going. But if you can come out and run the football, that's just lining up toe-to-toe, let's go at them, and Wisconsin can do that, right? And I think Ohio State can do that, which is why I like Ohio State so much out of the East, obviously.
I think that's a great point, Zach, because really we're picking the 2 teams that are best equipped to get through October 24th through December 12th in some conditions that are going to be Some of them are pretty gnarly. Ohio State's
the December 3rd one, and
you got at Illinois followed by at East Lansing,
Yeah.
which I think you could schedule those games tomorrow, and the weather would turn desolate in East Lansing. Like that's just the way it is every time that you guys were there.
Yeah.
But those are the teams that can line up. They have the best offensive lines. Obviously, Justin Fields is an X factor that's different than what Wisconsin will throw out there, but they get really creative with their rushing attack. Now Trey Sermon to support that for Ohio State. Two teams that run the ball.
Yeah.
Pick them to win the Big Ten. That's a pretty easy format.
Yeah.
No doubt.
So.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. It comes down to running the football, and yes, we can dive into the schedule, right? And who knows what the weather's going to be, because you are moving some games back, right? You start getting into East Lansing, some of those games late, and the snow could become a factor, right?
Very true.
But it still comes down to who can run the football, you know? And so, yeah, I think Ohio State will be fine from that standpoint of Illinois. You just hope it's not a noon game. That's the worst in Illinois. When you go to Champaign, Illinois, middle of nowhere, the hotel is like one of those hotels with like a water park in the inside of it. Remember, you guys know what I'm talking
you come
about.
out, it's windy as all heck,
It's so windy. In the noon games, they're 11 a.m. So it's a 5 a.m. wake-up call, and you're waking up, you're like, oh, my God, this is not where I want to be right now.
Self-made juice all day long in
and
those
every
games.
time you flew into Illinois, every single time before that game, I felt like we were going to die on the landing. Because that wind is
literally, because you're like this all the way through. So
you have a near-death experience, and you got to go play a
You start on
game.
day one.
It's weird that they don't have a better home field advantage than that. Then. Like,
There's many more topics there, but we'll unpack those later.
I think, all right, here's the other part. Zach, you brought up that Nebraska's on the rise. That's now the opener. We're going to start be talking about the Huskers a lot more. And I'll preface by saying, Huskers, you did a great job fighting. You got the 8 players filing a lawsuit. Scott Frost speaking up. You had legislature in their state asking for answers from the Big Ten. Great job. Way to fight for football. Don't follow it up by complaining that your schedule is too hard the very next day.
Yeah, don't complain, right? For sure. And you knew, at least Nebraska with the lawsuits and whatnot, the Big Ten for sure was going to show them, who was boss, right? Yeah, I mean, Nebraska is on the rise. Hopefully you want to see them do well, right? You want the Big Ten to do well. Scott Frost, I think, is almost there. Look, what was it? It was last year, right? I think it was last year when then we went triple option against Ohio State and gave him a couple issues to start, but that's how Nebraska has to be successful right now, because he hasn't been able to recruit and bring the people in that he wants, so they have to be a little bit creative. There's a good thing and a bad thing. You're coming, if you're Nebraska, you're coming out against an Ohio State team that is hungry and wants to show the entire country that they are the best team, and they've been chomping at the bit to play. You're lucky, though, because you're going to an empty horseshoe, right? And so it's going to be a weird element for everyone. It's going to be like one of our scrimmages, in fall camp, which is whatever. But they'll pump music in there. They'll get it juiced up. And
it's going to be such a strange feeling, man. I mean, just being able to watch the NFL games, you can already tell how different it's going to be, that being one of our biggest game-changing factors. But, I mean, on Nebraska's side of things, yes, they will have this increased difficulty to the schedule. But, kind of like we're talking here, they are a program that's building. They're a program that's developing, right? They want to take that second step in their year 2 or, some of those finite points in, to be able to say, all right, well, now we got the challenge we wanted.
Sure. Let's
figure out where we are. And I think a lot of their coaching staffs will probably be taking on that challenge for their players and et cetera. But it'll just be an interesting fight. Do I think that they're going to be able to hold a flame to us? No. But in its own right, to see them more competitive is nothing but good things for the Big Ten.
And Michael was talking about this before the show. I'm going to steal that point and tee him up. That, I mean, Nebraska is asking for help. Like their AD is saying that publicly, which I think is sad, because Scott Frost and the football program both said, we want to play a Big Ten schedule. We know it's hard. We're going to earn it. We're not backing down. And then the AD says, boy, it's hard to fly the first time and go on the road and play Ohio State and Penn State to start. Like that's not fair. Well, I think Indiana wanted to build a program. I think Maryland wants to build a program. I think, my favorite program in the East, Rutgers, they have to play Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan every single year.
Yeah.
Every year. I've never once heard them complain about, why do we have to play every team in the East?
Man, I personally think it's embarrassing and demoralizing for him to come out and say our schedule's too hard. This is a Big Ten schedule. Like, you're in the Big Ten. You want your program to be up with these people that they scheduled you for. I would assume that Scott Frost is going to his players and being like, "Hey, let's climb this mountain.
Yeah.
You prove it to these people. Like, let them know if you want to fight the big dogs, we got them. Go do something." And yeah, okay, if you lose those games, it is what it is. You can chalk it up to it's a rebuilding year and we're learning. But to say, no, how dare you schedule the best teams in the Big Ten when we still need a couple years before that? Like, what the hell? This is football. Like,
and it goes back to I've been saying this since they divided the conferences. The East is loaded, right? I mean, you look at the West, and we just talked about who was going to win the West, and it's like everyone points to Wisconsin, right? Because who really is there in the West, right? Iowa really hasn't been what they have been. Nebraska obviously isn't. Minnesota had one good year last year. But other than that, who's the other? Northwestern, right? Hey, listen, I got a lot of Northwestern buddies. I love you guys, but it's not a powerhouse, right? I mean, you look at the East, it's loaded. And so the Nebraska AD is kind of like, hello, look at what Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan are looking at every single year, knowing that they got to play each other, right? And there's going to be some all-out heavyweight battles.
Yeah, I get it. Like, it doesn't hurt to ask, and you can respect an AD that wants to fight for his program. We've talked about that with Gene Smith or President Christina Johnson trying to bring football back. But there comes a point where when it gets to the football matters, you might be better off not saying some of those things out loud.
Right.
Like, hey, help us out. And they were so close, right? I mean, there's the 6-game series. It was a permanent crossover. Nebraska, Ohio State was not going anywhere on the schedule. But the other two options were Penn State or Rutgers. There's a pretty big difference there. Yeah. And I would definitely want to play Rutgers if I was Scott Frost or the AD at Nebraska. But that's the way it goes. You can't change the scheduling protocol just because this cycle might be too hard. Yeah. Look, Ohio State's schedule is pretty easy by Ohio State standards, but they also don't have to play the Buckeyes. That's what makes everybody else's schedule harder.
Yeah. And I don't agree that as a football program that wants to be, if you don't want to be good, then yeah, definitely go play Maryland, go play Rutgers, have fun, put your jersey on, and tell people you play football. If you want to be a good program, you should want to go play these top teams. Even if you lose, at least you can come off the field and be like, that's what we're trying to be. That's the level that we need to get to. We're not there yet. But it blows my mind that, I mean, like I said, I would assume Scott Frost is not telling that to his players. That's the AD who wants his program to look good so they can recruit more. But if you're going up against the top dogs, that's like what Michigan State does. Like, well, they used to be a top, but they get the guys who want to play against Ohio State, who want to play against Michigan because either Ohio State or Michigan didn't recruit them or something, but they get those guys with a chip on their shoulder. Nebraska has that opportunity.
Yeah. And thinking about like championship caliber teams, what makes them championship caliber is their resume, right? They went out and they had their backs against the wall and they figured it out. And we watched it and said, holy cow, that was an amazing play. That was an amazing possession. That was an amazing drive. And oh, by the way, that builds itself into what can be, a team that can do that year over year, right? So that's what you want out of your players. You want them to take those challenges on, and it's disappointing from the AD's perspective, but inside that locker room, you got to believe that coaches and players are saying, hey, we're going to believe in ourselves and we're going to try to go out there and put it to these dudes the best that we can, and go from there.
And you can objectively say that Nebraska's schedule is hard. I understand that. Michigan got a hard schedule too. Ohio State, it's not that difficult for them. It would, if they were a marginal program like Nebraska is right now, then you might look at going on the road to Penn State on Halloween or, closing with Michigan and think, man, that's really tough. Like, I can't believe that happened. But those are also enough opportunities for the Buckeyes, Zach, to say, if you beat Penn State on the road, you beat Michigan, if you beat Wisconsin in the Big Ten title game, 9-0, that's enough for Ohio State to get in the college football playoff.
No doubt. And if you look at the Big Ten landscape, it's only an 8-game season, right? They have Penn State, Michigan State all on their schedule. In my mind, those 3 programs are in the top half of the Big Ten, right? So you can't say it's a cakewalk. Maybe you can say Michigan State's obviously going through a rebuild, right? But by the end of the year, maybe they are better than expected. Obviously you have to go on the road to Penn State. Never easy. We played there. It's not. I mean, they're not going to have the whiteout, but it's still not. It goes back to Illinois. It's not a fun place to play. The hotel's terrible. The facilities suck. Terrible. Yeah, I mean, there are a whole bunch of bad things about that, right? And then you obviously have to play Michigan, right? And you're playing Michigan in a rivalry game. right now, no fans playing at home, right? It's just a completely in December, it's a completely different dynamic, right? So, you know, the conversations about this school, you know, Nebraska has it hard, Ohio State has it easy. You still got to play football games, man. You still got to play in a year where there was no off season, there are no fans, the dynamics completely different than normal college football. It's like, man, just go out and play the games, you know?
I agree. 8-game season is going to be a big difference.
No doubt.
I think, you know, you go from 12 to 8 games. I would expect a team like Ohio State to, okay, maybe Penn State and Michigan are a close game. Michigan State, I would prefer if we beat the brakes off of them, but you go to them December at Michigan State, you don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
But I really expect Ohio State to wipe the floor with just about all 8 teams, especially if you're trying to make a case to go to the championship. Then, I mean, you are just the better team. You don't get that excuse anymore of, oh, we played Alabama week 1 or, you know, we're tired or you shouldn't be dealing with as many injuries. You shouldn't be dealing with fatigue. Guys should be hungry to go prove that they're a national championship caliber team. I expect Ohio State to really come out.
Hey, to your point, though, you're right. Let's not talk about schedule. Let's talk about there's no hiccups, right? On a normal year, 12-week season, how long it is, 2 bye weeks, you can have it maybe a hiccup every once in a while or not look great and, you know, play Purdue and barely win, right? I mean, you can have it. 8-game season, man, there's no false. You are going in guns a-blazing every single game. You have to send a message. That it's 8 games in 8 weeks, 9 games in 9 weeks, right? I mean, we've never done that. And so it goes back to the whole dealing with a completely new dynamic through the season. And, yeah, there is no room for error.
Yeah, there isn't. I mean, and some of these guys, right, I mean, at least in my standpoint, I would try to find some comfort and ease in places, right? And thinking about, like, say if you're a freshman or say if you're just making that transition, your high school season probably was around 8 to 9 games. So trying to imagine in your head, hey, what were some of the things that we may have done well in those environments? Not because high school is going to be the same competitive arena, but more so because of a timeline perspective. How important is this drive? How important is this catch in this run? And building that into a bigger picture of, hey, we got to go make a run. And in order to do that, we have to showcase unequivocally that we are a championship caliber team, right? So with this timeline, let's do it.
Yeah, here's what I worry more about this year. They finally got to a point last week where it's like play ball, right? And everyone's like, you know, if you're a player on that team, you're like, hey, it's time to get back to business and go. That's all you needed. Play football, you're like, okay, time to get to work, right? What I also think you have to worry about is, hey, what happens if that Illinois team goes 0-2, right? And then Jimmy the linebacker wants to go to the sorority house, right, and party, and next thing you know, the season falls apart 3-4 games in, right? Because not only now, the hardest part now isn't just taking care of business on your own. Now you got to make sure everyone else is taking care of business, doing what they're supposed to do, even if they are 0-7, even if they are, right? I mean, so that's the hardest part is there's still things that are out of your control because if Big Ten cancels the season, you know, 3-4 games in, you're like, man, you know, I don't want to be the guy to bring it up, but it's just the reality.
And what, there are 104 dudes on a team?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of guys.
Thinking about that dynamic on a team that might be struggling that bad, right? What's the 84th guy look like? What's the 74th guy look like? So I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. Is just, I mean, we're not in the middle of the season wondering what's going to happen. Like at any point, like you said, one of these teams that's not doing well could go. Someone on that team makes a bad decision.
Which one might be the most likely one?
Rutgers.
Yeah.
Anybody like. But
I don't know about Rutgers because I've been to that campus before.
They got nowhere.
I don't think there's much to do. Not much to do.
You can go down to their strip. It's like one block bar. You can get stuff your face. Yeah. You guys don't get to experience Rutgers the way I do.
Yeah.
Oh baby, definitely the best road trip there is. No, none of that's true. But I am going to stuff my face with some Rutgers. Yeah. That's a professional segue. We're going to be right back with Lettermen Live, brought to you by Roosters.
Roosters is one of the unique companies that we deal with. They're involved in everything we do, from our personal foundation to also the Cancer Research Fund. And that's from the Buckeye Cruise from Cancer to all the events leading up to the Buckeye Cruise.
They donate back to different organizations that are near and dear to their heart, and we're so fortunate to have been with Roosters now for a long, long time.
All the folks at Roosters are just genuinely kind folks, and they want to make a difference.
Thank you, Roosters Foundation.
Thank you, Roosters Foundation.
Thank you, Roosters Foundation.
All right, welcome back to Lettermen Live, brought to you by Roosters, talking about Ohio State and Big Ten football. Now that we know that's actually going to happen, guys fueling up there. Mike's going with some shrimp this week. Woo. Mac and cheese bites are just staying out there. Zach's leaving them in honor of Schlegs.
I am. Schlegs, I got you, buddy.
Maybe he'll dive into that. But so aside from, it's so nice, by the way, just to be talking about football and schedules and comparing teams. But Ohio State actually had some meaningful roster news last week. We'd been talking Wyatt Davis and Shaun Wade opting out, and then they decide to opt back in. The best way to replace an All-American guard who leaves is by bringing one right back in. If you lose a first-round draft pick at cornerback, hey, replace him with that same guy. That's pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
You guys know, I wrote about this last week, but you guys have lived it. The fact that these guys could sign on the line and sign with agents and go pro and be, get any loans, be multimillionaire overnight, and they have elected not to do that, tells me, and we've heard thousands of stories about the brotherhood and the culture, but the fact that they opt back in to go through a training camp, to go through this 9-week sprint, to be with their teammates, man, I don't know if there's a more clear example of that than these guys coming back.
There's no doubt. Just thinking about like how important it is to all these guys and building that into a couple sets of actions, there you go. Yeah. For us, and maybe I'm speaking for them or whatever, but what they really wanted to go do was go compete with the guys that they had grown together and so close with. That was most important to them. But in the grander context of, hey, I have great abilities and I can do this at the next level, they started to make some of those business level decisions. So you can't fault them for that. But then also, right, you give them that sliver of hope, like, wait, hold on, I get to go block for Mike, or I get to go get Zach in the end zone one more time.
Right.
Those moments are way more important than anything else. Because even once you get there, you can ask guys who have the biggest contract on down to guys that have just been making it on P Squad, and they'll tell you to a man that you're not going to get a lot of those experiences back. And especially when you got a caliber team like they do now this year, like, let's get together, let's see what we can do one last time. And their actions are examples of it.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It is a brotherhood, right? There's not many places in the country like Ohio State. And, if those guys wanted to go make millions and do whatever, which they will at one point, but if they really want to do that right now, they would have left after last year, right? They would have never came back this year. There's a reason why they came back this year, and it was because they wanted to go for that national championship. They wanted to come back and be, their 111th on the field and have those experiences again, right? They weren't ready to give that up. And so, at some point, they had to make a business decision. But then as soon as the Big Ten got their act together, it was like, hey, we're going to have a season. Those feelings start flooding back. I want to be part of Ohio State. I want to be part of that brotherhood. I want to, be with those guys for one more run. And that's what they did. Like, hey, this is what happened. Now I've changed my course, right? There's nothing like it, right? I know Shaun Wade's dad's been vocal, and he's even come out and said, I wanted Shaun to leave after last year, right? But Shaun is experiencing the culture that's at Ohio State. He's in the locker room. He's around those guys. He was like, yeah, I've got millions of dollars looking at me right in the face, but I want to come back because I want to compete with those guys again.
I would say I want to add something to that, because 100% that brotherhood is a huge reason why you come back to play. But I think as an elite athlete, you have these accomplishments that you want to put on your, not necessarily your resume, just in your life. You only get so many opportunities to accomplish. I'm sure there are guys who wanted to win a state title with their football team. Once you're out of high school, you're not doing it. And then when you get to college, if you have an opportunity to win a national championship, once you go to the NFL, you will never be a collegiate national football or a champion. So they can go to they didn't need more tape. Everybody knew they were going to be high draft picks. They didn't need to go and prove to NFL coaches that they're worth millions of dollars. The only thing, either personally for them, I'm sure they wanted, hey, this is a real opportunity. Even with a short season, this is a real opportunity to go win a national championship with the guys I love. And the brotherhood aspect of that, it makes it a lot more enticing to go back to your college. If you're on a good team but you don't like the dudes you play with, yeah, go get your mill. But if you love the guys you play with and you have a chance to go win a national championship, it makes it a lot more palatable decision than just leaving early.
All right, I asked the guys on Thursday night at our first weekend kickoff at Urban's Playhouse, like, which one's bigger, Wyatt Davis or Shaun Wade coming back? If you could only have had one of them, and now you get both, but which one's more important to the Buckeyes?
Shaun Wade, in my opinion. and the only reason I say that is just because, from just firming up some spots and looking at, places that need to play well, that's I look at the secondary, right? A great secondary with can help the guys up front get home a lot more, right? And given that there's been transition in years past, especially at that, like Coach Meyer calls that Cadillac position, right?
He seems to have a lot of Cadillac positions,
right? There's no doubt. But great secondary play covers up a lot of that progression. So that'd be my thing.
Mike, go ahead.
I gotta speak before you because you're gonna say exactly what I'm gonna say. I'm gonna go with Wyatt. Because exactly what Zach was saying earlier, this is going to be a running season.
Yeah.
And if that offensive line is so stout, removing one piece isn't going to kill it. But when you've got 5 earth movers up front, that opens up everything. And Ohio State, I mean, their offense is already prolific, but to just have 5 just grown men up there playing and moving people where you want them to move them. And I think having Shaun Wade back is going to be massive. I got no disagreements. I think for me, it'll be just more exciting to see a playmaker like that on the back end supporting and doing what he's going to do. But, I mean, when you talk about this season, having Wyatt Davis up there, he's going to be something to watch.
I don't know, Zach, if I should be surprised or not that a wide receiver chose a defensive back and a defensive lineman chose an offensive
No
lineman.
doubt. Which is why I'm not answering. Which is why if Mike picked Shaun Wade, I was going to take Wyatt Davis. But now it's 1-1. I'm like, dude, how can you pick? Like, you asked that question. I'm like, just like going out for ice cream. And like, you can't pick what flavor. So it's like you get both scoops, right? It's like, now that it's 1-1, perfect. I'm done. Like, both of them are great players. Both of them are All-Americans. But I'm not picking because it's 50-50.
Doesn't want to break the tie.
I'm not breaking the tie because in my mind it's like a tie, so I'm not breaking it now.
That's fair.
Fair enough. Boy, wow. I'm torn on it too for a couple reasons. Like Wyatt Davis, he started one season and the Big Ten voted him an all-decade guard, which is which is outstanding, and hard to comprehend. And I think the world, the next guy who's going to be in line there at guard is Enoch Vamahi, and I think that Ohio State could have pieced that offensive line together just fine. Is it the same as having Wyatt Davis and Josh Myers and Harry Miller in the interior? No, it's not. But then you look at the defensive secondary, you know that Kerry Combs is going to get the most out of them, but are Cameron Brown and Seven Banks and Marcus Williamson ready to really be that first-round guy? I don't know. I think, to your point, both are hugely significant. The reason that we're talking about Ohio State as a co-favorite to win the national title is because they have both of those two guys. If you had just one out of the two, would that be the case? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, there would be issues. Cameron Brown and Seven Banks haven't had to be primary cornerbacks yet. You don't know how that's going to work.
Totally. I mean, it's just a lot of maturity, at least, in my opinion, when I look at the defense that needs to happen, right? Not to say that any of the DNs haven't been there, but they need to be able to take that role and be that guy, right? Not to say that Seven Banks or some of the younger DBs aren't ready to go step up and be the field corner and, shut down that number 2 receiver. But, having that other guy that's been there with you and that that you can lean on and makes plays allows you to have the confidence to go make the plays yourself and be that guy. And then, oh, by the way, you turn around and look at yourself and, everybody's looking at you for the how'd you get off that release? How'd you jam him right there? And then you just roll on those good moments.
Well, I think, Austin, back to what you said, if I were to have to pick one, right, and I'm sitting there, it's like the safer pick is bringing back Shaun Wade because that offensive line can get pieced together, right?
Sure. Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of young guys that we haven't really seen yet, and how strong the 4 other guys are up front that you could piece it together. The more exciting pick would have been taking Wyatt Davis, knowing that that's secure, and then it's exciting to see what
just
I have in the back
points,
end, right?
Yeah.
Well, not even from that. It's just exciting that I get to have an unknown on the back end, some young guy that's got to pop up and got to play field corner, more pressure on it, right? It's like that's going to be highlighted a lot more because he's got more one-on-one battles. Right. So, I mean, both picks.
And offenses are good, man. Like offensive coordinators are really good at isolating corners. So
no doubt, but it's exciting to see someone new play, right? Everyone's eyes light up when a new recruit comes to Ohio State, right? Or there's a big time like Justin Fields comes, like. It's like that shiny object that everyone wants to see. So it's like if you pick Wyatt Davis, you have that shiny object out there on defense. Go ahead, see him play, right? So you look at it both ways. But, man, is it great to have both of those guys back.
And I almost feel like in some ways Shaun Wade still is that for Ohio State because we saw what he did in the slot, but he was the third guy between Damon Arnett and Jeff Okudah last year. Like, this is the first time we're seeing a Shaun Wade outside cornerback to be the guy. So in some elements, I think that's why there's been so much intrigue around his decision specifically, because otherwise, like, you know, what are we talking about?
Yeah.
You know that there's guys coming in behind him who can play.
All right, well, this is the last time we saw him. He was laying the smackdown on Trevor Lawrence, and he should have never been kicked out of the game. Right?
It changed the game.
Yeah, he should have never been ejected. Right, and so I think that's another thing that's went on in his head is that wasn't the last play he wanted wearing an Ohio State uniform. Right.
For sure.
But yeah, I mean, we aren't even getting into hits and ejections because you know how I am.
Boy, I thought we were going to get real going. Now football's back.
We're not in season 4 yet, buddy. You know?
Okay, well,
couple more weeks.
This training camp, we'll ease back into it. Man, I really thought I could get Zach going. Getting him on the officiating and talking about the Fiesta
hey,
Bowl.
listen, these guys know, man. I was always in the officials' ears. These guys know. Even at practice, man, I used to, I used to get on those guys.
That can't be right, Mike.
I picked it up from him. I watched Zach. I started yelling at officials.
I just let Zach go. It's going to be a net benefit for the offense, so we're good.
Man. The good news is we all get to start yelling at the Big Ten officials soon enough. The season is coming back, man. It's so good to be talking ball with these guys again. Lettermen Live brought to you by Roosters. We're going to call it a day. We're going to dive into this food. We're going to be back here next week as we are every Monday as we get closer now. October 24th, circle that date, Ohio State, Nebraska in the Horseshoe. Football is finally coming back. Michael Bennett, Evan Spencer, Zach Bourne. Appreciate these guys so much for joining me. I'm just Austin Ward. We'll see you next week for Lettermen Live here at Roosters.